Bold header, flashy rose. No. Why does that exist, Chandeep? Why? When can you build this? Yeah. I can. Off you go, right? Without any consequence of how maintainable it would be, how easily it would fall over when I left the company. None of those considerations.
Right.
If you start comparing yourself to what other people know, then you're not comparing yourself to one person. You're comparing yourself to 75 people or 25 people that you follow. And you're never going to know what they know because there's 25 people. So don't feel bad.
Now, I've had a long-standing wish of connecting with really brainy and smart people around in the area of data and Power BI and have them over on the YouTube channel and have conversations about data and skill sets and several things that we generally don't really speak about because we are too busy discussing about the technical nitty-gritty stuff. Now, this could have been a personal endeavor, but I thought it would be a nice thing to just call them over, have them interviewed, and share that recording with you people. Let's go. Hey, Wyn, welcome to the show here. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Chandeep.
Where are you joining in from?
Perth, Western Australia, down in the bottom left-hand corner, far from everywhere.
What time would that be there?
We're 2:30 in the afternoon. So yeah, sort of about 3 hours behind, or currently 2 hours behind Sydney over on the East Coast. So fair old time difference.
And nothing on the Power BI side that is keeping you busy today? I mean, you took off time in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I was actually updating a Power Query training course. So that was my job today. And then I'm running some training tomorrow. So lots of training going on at the moment.
Have you always stayed in Australia or you've been at some other place?
Yeah, 16 years now I've been here. Originally from South Wales in the UK, a little town called Swansea, a little fishing village called Mumbles. It's a really weird name for a place, but it's a nice little place to grow up. Lots of beaches and sort of fishing boats and all that sort of stuff around there. So yeah, but moved here sort of with work and also just for the lifestyle about 16 years ago. So yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's a long time.
Yeah.
You recently wrote a book, Wyn, and without any further ado, I just want to kind of get into the book.
Yeah,
tell us about the book that you've written. Who is it for? What is the book all about? And things around that.
Yeah, so Power BI for the Excel analyst. So basically aimed at people like me who are starting their Power BI journey. And maybe, really it's aimed at everybody learning Power BI, but I guess I come at it with a bit of a flavor of Excel as a background. So some of my references and some of my examples, and I've even got a whole chapter on how you can do the whole Power Query, Power Pivot stuff in Excel as well, and build a dashboard in Excel. So I've come at it from that angle. I just really wanted to write a book that was end to end and covered a bit of everything, because a lot of the books I've read are quite specialist in terms of areas they focus on. So I just wanted really to have an overview type book. And I didn't think there was not one that I'd read anyway, that was sort of approachable to a mass audience. So that was the plan.
So who do you think would be the target audience for your book? Like somebody working with Excel and planning to move to Power BI could pick up your book, or somebody already working with Power BI could pick up your book? Who do you think is the right set of audiences?
Yeah, I think both. And I have the same experience on the training courses we run, that people who've self-taught, just from occasional YouTube clips or whatever, or listening to other people say something in the office, when they do the sort of formal, structured type training, there's all these little nuggets that they go, oh, right, yeah, that makes sense now. Or I realize I should have been doing it this way. Or, okay, I now understand, how relationships work between tables, or why I should set up a fact and a dimension, or what DAX is doing under the hood. So all those sorts of things, I think everyone can benefit. The most benefit, I guess, will be from people who've, are just learning and just moving. But I think there's something in there for everybody, to be honest.
The other question that I personally wanted to ask you was that I saw your video that got like 1 million hits.
That's nuts.
Which is, I believe, 3 skills for an Excel analyst or something like that. That is how it was titled. Yeah. What do you think was going in your mind when you were recording that video? Did you think that it's going to get so popular, or it was just like any other video for you? Second, now that you've seen it, it's so popular. Why do you think that people resonated with that video so much?
Yeah, at the time, I didn't think it would be particularly, more popular than anything else. But looking at it, you just go, okay, there's all these people who don't know about tables in Excel, and that's an eye-opener to people when they go, oh, okay, there's these tables. And then that leads nicely into Power Query and getting your unstructured data into nice tables. And then tables are the core of Power Pivot in the data model. So there's this real nice sort of pathway. And I think sort of, that video just talks people through it. It's like 20 minutes long, just talking through the concepts.
Sure.
And look, it got basically no views for about 9 months. So it wasn't some like magical video that hit and suddenly took off. I honestly think it was like the first 9 months was about 1,000 views. And then somehow it ended up, I think, on the YouTube home screen. Some algorithm kicked in and went, hey, this is, somebody liked it that sort of had a following or something. And it just started showing up in front of people, and people liked it. So then more people commented and more people liked, and that just feeds the beast, as it were. And it just, it takes off.
Sure. Do you want to talk about certain comments that you see coming up on that video repeatedly, and what pattern does it show in terms of the knowledge that people have of these data tools, Excel, Power BI, things like that?
Yeah.
Like people are amazed looking at these things that you've shown, or they have agreed to what you have shown, and it reconfirms their notion about the tools, or what kind of comments have you seen on this?
Yeah, it feeds into I think the general comments will be, this is just really useful and does it open my eyes as to what's possible in Excel. I think from having run training courses for best part of 15 years now in these topics and in Excel and stuff, I think I explain stuff in a pretty calm and logical way and try and structure stuff properly. So there's generally, I try to have a nice logical flow in what I'm doing. And that just resonates with people. So they like it from that point of view. But it's the same as all my other 100 or so videos, and they haven't had 1 million views. So it's not like I've got some magic. I don't have a magic sauce ingredient. It's just some videos just take off. It's just weird. I don't know. I don't really have a concept, but I think those core concepts of biggest challenge I see with the whole of Excel and Power BI and people learning it is thinking in terms of getting their data in structured column format. I think once people get over that hurdle, everything then starts to click into place slowly. But if you're just dealing with data all over the shop and you can't conceptualize in your mind why it's a good idea to lay your tables out into columns, I think you're just going to struggle for the rest of the whole journey in terms of this sort of analysis role.
I would say that these tools, which is like a table feature in Excel and the Power Pivot and Power Query, are at least a decade old, tables even more so. What do you think that keeps people away from learning these, or at least getting to know about these and then making use of these newer, I wouldn't say newer, but these tools that have been there in Excel for the past 10 years or so? Like, why aren't people discovering enough and improvising on what they're doing? What's the barrier?
It's an interesting question. I think part of it is like the self-discovery piece around tables and things. You just see it in the Excel menu under table styles. You click on it, it gives you a pretty table, and it's like, okay, that's nice. And then you type a formula in and you get a weird sort of with a square brackets formula, and people just don't know what that is. So that sort of freaks them out. Also, if people are typing formulas in, they just want to change a formula halfway down the list and they just type something in, then, the formula doesn't fill down and stuff like that. Or they change one formula and every formula changes and they don't like it. They should like it. We know it's really important that's
really good. That's
but
right.
They just, people, it just doesn't behave as they're used to it behaving. And also I think there's just a big tail of people who are passing on their knowledge, who learned Excel in the 15 to 20 years where it didn't have tables and Power Query and Power Pivot. So that's what they think Excel is. And they're passing their knowledge down on to the next generation of people, showing them, VLOOKUPs and all that sort of stuff, but not really giving them the knowledge of tables and other things like that. So, Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing as well, and lack of training within organizations. Same thing.
There could be two things to it now that I think about it. One is the self-discovery or self-initiative that one could take, but it's like really too much to ask for. When I do trainings for companies here and in India, it's kind of too much to expect from an employee to kind of do something and work like 8 hours a day. You work on spreadsheets and then you go back home and not open the Netflix and open Excel and then start doing more of what you just did. And that was anyways drudgery during the day. So it's like a bit too much. And, maybe 1 out of 1,000 people is going to do it, not like 100 out of 1,000.
Yeah.
That's even a bigger percentage to ask for. So, which leads me to another point that, do you think something better could be done with the application Excel itself? Now, when you take a look at the modern day application, any project management tool closer to Excel like Airtable or any other tools that are out there at the market, which are somewhat competing with the spreadsheet market, could Excel also come up with videos or instructions on the face of Excel itself as you update it, that this is what you've got it? However, Excel does that. I mean, once you kind of update your Excel, you have this what's new in Excel, but that's so hidden at the moment.
Yeah.
And so texty at the moment that I don't know. I mean, it's not really going to appeal to a lot of people when you have like dazzling apps, kind of spurting around in the market. So, do you think maybe at the software point of view, something could be done?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because Excel is an open programming platform, so it doesn't do one thing, amazingly. True. It does everything brilliantly, but, there's always better tools at specific things. And those tools can just give guidance on those specific things. But you open up an Excel file and it's just like, right, you can just do whatever you want to some extent. I think, they're trying, the Microsoft team or the Excel team are trying with this because there's things like analyze data and stuff like this now. You can highlight a block of data and it might pop up with, do you want to convert this into a pivot table or suggested tables and ideas and stuff like this? So they're trying this stuff out, but it's just, everyone just has, everyone's got different requirements. And some of the sort of AI helper type stuff, like the analyze data, it requires you to have your data in a nice table laid out nicely to start with.
Table, that's right.
And therefore, you sort of, you're at a losing battle to start with. So I think there is more stuff. Have you seen the formulas by example that sort of got flagged up recently? It's sort of like in the beta channel, I think, or in web. I can't quite remember. So this is like, flash fill. So you use flash fill and it just does stuff magically in the background. Well, same concept now, except it actually writes the formula for you and says, do you want to accept this formula? So for me, that's awesome. That is showing you what the formula is, helping teach you a little bit that there's this thing called a formula, that can do these sorts of things. And then, as you update your numbers, the formula will update. So flash fills are one hit wonder and might be right, might be wrong. So that sort of concept, I'm really quite excited about that sort of helper guidance, showing people what's happening under the hood, helping explain people what's happened, as well as just saying, hey, do you want us to turn this into a chart, but then not telling people how they got there, which I think is just not that great.
Sure. But I mean, the software itself has a lot of reach and, just applying a standard Pareto kind of thing that, I mean, you still kind of face the 20% of the problem that 80% of people are going to face. I agree to what you just said. It's like there are corner cases. People are going to use Excel for modeling, for Monte Carlo or something or the other, which is like corner case in the world. But sure, like 80%, maybe even more, 90% of the people are still going to kind of do, are the like the VLOOKUP crowd or maybe the finance crowd or kind of that kind of crowd. So still like maybe like a video or something with video kind of going really high in terms of acceptance content.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe videos could be,
because there's also when you, and again, we as sort of regular users probably skip these things now. We don't even check them. But when you open a new Excel file in the start screen, there are these sort of tutorial templates, how to do a pivot table, how to do this, how to do that. And they're actually pretty good now. They've spent quite a bit of time and effort on those. But again, it's that surfacing of, and the little pop-ups that appear that for us, the problem with the pop-ups is you're never ready to look at that pop-up because you're in the middle of something. So then you just click on it before it's even popped up. You close and you go, wonder what that was. And then there's no real way of getting it back. There should be a pin for later or, discard permanently or whatever it might be. So those sorts of things, they're trying different things without overwhelming people. The video one would be an interesting one, but it would be like, where do you embed that? Is it just a link? Is it a link to and then the versions? You've just got versions. How do you handle that when somebody's on the monthly channel versus the semi-annual versus the semi-annual that hasn't been updated for 2 years versus I don't envy them.
Buying standalone SKUs as well.
That's right. What's your thought on the standard? Would you is there a scenario where standard is the right option, do you think? Or is subscription the only way to go now?
From the business point of view, I think subscriptions are great from Microsoft. It just kind of keeps people reeled in to having newer capabilities added to Excel. But I also understand the point of view of, let's say, a company that really want to contain the cost. And, you just want to give a tool for people to work and you're not really worried about, features rolling in and things like that. So I think there is a place for both the audiences and stuff like that. But at least for content creators like ours and people who are avidly using Excel to kind of push the limits, subscription is the way to go. That's what I think.
I think it's sort of the speed of update now and the significance of the changes that are happening means that, I don't know if you've had this on your channel and things, but people posting, I haven't got XLOOKUP or I haven't got this or I don't, and it's just like, well, you still got Excel 2013. You're just never gonna, or somebody's just bought, Excel 2019 and it hasn't got XLOOKUP and they think, shouldn't I have that now? And it's just, so it's interesting. I don't know how much longer Microsoft will keep doing purchases. I think eventually one day, probably 10 years in the future, it'll be subscription only. But
I think so. And Microsoft is really kind of pushing it hard. I mean, if you think about it, the cost of the subscription is like not even a tenth of what you would actually pay for the standalone SKU product, even as a team. So, it's that cheap. So so it makes a lot of sense to kind of have the newer features rolled into your Excel and, kind of work with the newer features.
And if you're dealing with other organizations, if you're ever receiving files from other organizations, there's going to be that compatibility issue. And the problem is only going to get worse, I think, as the rate of, updates and new features just accelerates. It used to be every 3 years. Then it was sort of every 6 months there was something new. And now every month there's something that's, quite dazzling and stuff. So it's an interesting, quandary for companies who are still on the perpetual one-off purchase of a license to go, really, we should go, I think probably towards the subscription, but
Correct. Wyn, why is your channel not called after your own name, Wyn Hopkins, and what's your role at Access Analytic?
So
would you want to talk about that?
So Access Analytic was created 23 years ago. I joined the company 16 years ago. I was just joined as sort of employee number 3. And then sort of about 5 years ago, I became a director of the company as well. So, my colleague, Jeff Robson, he set up the company originally. And we've just sort of been slowly growing over the years. But it's through the Access Analytic brand. It was originally just posting a couple of ad hoc videos as just a bit of a, show and tell and a bit of a addition to some of the training. So if we didn't have time to cover it in the training course, we'd go, here's a little video we recorded about this topic and this topic. So that sort of started it off. And then as it got, a few years ago, I decided, right, I'm just going to concentrate on doing a video a week from now on. And then it started to take off a bit. So you get a bit of enjoyment from doing that. You get nice feedback, which is always good. You get once in a blue moon, you get the one nasty bit of commentary, which you sort of dwell on for too long. You should just bin. But but it's good.
But there are perks as well. I mean, you once in a while you also kind of hit 1 million views.
Well, And it's interesting what ones hit. My third most popular video is on where's my Teams recording saved. which is just random.
Oh, okay.
Nothing to do with Excel, nothing to do with Power BI. Where's my Teams recording? So yeah, bizarre what actually gets the views and the likes.
So I've got two questions here. I mean, you can choose to pick up whichever you want to answer first. One is I want to talk about maybe your journey of what you were doing as a third employee of the company versus what you are doing at the moment. And the second is that how do you get these ideas to make videos on? Like how would you think in the middle of the day that I want to make a video on where did I lose my Teams recording or whatever that might be? So whichever you want to pick up first.
All right, let's answer the second one first then. So inspiration for videos. So real life, clients, solutions, occasionally in training courses, questions coming up, the same questions coming up over and over again in courses, which I go, look, I haven't got time to mention that now, but here we go. And then one of the biggest inspirations currently really is forums. So I'm pretty active on like Reddit, and then occasionally in the Excel tech community and the Power BI community, and just seeing, and LinkedIn and other places, or even comments on YouTube as well. All those things go, oh, okay, yeah, actually that's an interesting one, and I can do a video on that, and I just put it into my little to-do list. And then, come Saturday morning, or maybe if I've got an afternoon free with no client work or something, I'll have a look through that list and think, I don't really want to do any of those. and then you just sit there going, this thing came up this morning that I totally didn't have on my list yet already, and I'll just do one on that. So it's a bit random.
Yes.
You have to be in the mood. It's weird. You've got to be quite enthusiastic about it, I think, to go, I really want to do one. Or sometimes I start one, and then you just go, I don't know, this is a bit either too complicated or just a bit dull or something like that. So
do you wait for the question to kind of hear it again, or maybe resurface on any of the platforms that you're active on to kind of do a video on that this is a relevant question, or it should just click to you?
A bit of both, I think. Once it clicks, it clicks. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 people mentioning something for me to go, oh yeah, that would, that isn't making sense to people, so it would be a good one to do. Very rarely, somebody's sort of asked me to do a specific one. I do get those questions quite a bit, and most of them I'm just not interested in doing. I point them towards a video somebody else has already done, especially if I've known about it. But other times it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do that one actually, because I quite like the idea. And then to go back to the first question about sort of the sort of journey, I moved to Australia, and the job I moved to do just didn't work out. It wasn't for me, which in itself is quite stressful, because you just go, and it's the first time a job for me had never worked out. I'd always sort of started a job, done pretty well in it, lots of Excel stuff, financial modeling, forecasting, and then this job I couldn't do. It wasn't involving Excel for starters, or Power BI or anything at the time. This is
what was the job? What was the job involving?
I was in charge of a couple of Oracle programmers within a sort of an IT type finance team, which was just very alien to me, and sort of helping move that reporting into a sort of a new environment. But it was just out of my skill set. It wasn't really what I was expecting when I'd signed up for it. Had to bite the bullet and go, look, hands up, this isn't for me. I need to move on and find something I'm good at and enjoy. So then just did a internet search for Excel financial modeling, and this company called Analytic popped up. Just joined them as sort of employee number 3 in a small little office. And we still got a small office, but very small little office. And now we've got about 10 of us. So we've just grown over the years, but really I'm still doing the same thing largely, sort of running training in Excel and Power BI, building Excel and Power BI solutions for clients, but I guess a bit more now in terms of being responsible for a few more staff and helping people out, and also sort of promoting the business and that side of things. But yeah, day to day, I'm still doing the same thing. And that's what I like. I like the hands-on techie stuff. I like getting in amongst the code and playing around and that side of things.
When you're doing a consulting work for a client, have you seen repeated behaviors or repeated problems? What kind of projects do you work on? Or is there any pattern to kind of the problems that you solve, or every new project is a new project?
I guess there's underlying themes, but every project, you don't know exactly how you're going to solve it. So every project can be, well, you've got a sense that it can be solved using your knowledge of Excel, the underlying functionality, Power BI, the underlying functionality. So
the client cares about what tools do you use, or he's just tool agnostic. You just solve the problem.
Yes, I would say most of the time the client cares. And I guess, because that's what we specialize in, clients would come to us because they know we specialize in those areas. So maybe our audience is skewed a little bit. But, often clients want a tool that they can take over. We don't want to be, them to be beholden to us. We want to help them build something, hand it over to them, train them up on it, and then they run with it and they can enhance it if they've got the in-house skill set to do it. Half the challenge, is that companies have this, or they've got people with the skills, just those people have got full-time jobs and they haven't got the time to build the new stuff. And then other times they just don't have the in-house skills. So there are those scenarios, and then there is a bit of ongoing support when changes are needed. But, everyone, doesn't matter what size of organization. So we're dealing with big multinationals, massive multi-million-dollar firms, down to sort of much smaller ones. And everybody's just got export to CSV, export to Excel, even the companies that have got these beautiful SQL databases, right?
I understand. Totally.
So it doesn't matter, and the IT department can't often keep up with the demand for the different cuts of the data. So, that ideal solution of an IT department has a curated SQL database with all the views already built for everybody. And some companies are doing a really good job there. It's the right path to go.
Yes.
But there's still the business needs something this month, and there's 17 different parts of the business that need something this month. So, it's just not possible. And that's why Excel and Power BI and these tools, the self-service type stuff, it might not be perfect, but it's there to help people build stuff on a rapid basis that can then potentially be upgraded in a nice, sensible manner, rather than having sort of just some higgledy-piggledy manual process that is really hard for IT to then turn into a corporate, model or corporate solution. Or enterprise. So yeah.
Sure. Another question that I have is that when you pick up an assignment, I'm sure you've done a lot of them for consulting work on building solutions on Power BI and Excel and things like that. How often now that you're experienced with it, do you find problems that you're completely unaware about, that how you're going to move this problem and maybe solve it? Like what part of
all the time?
No, I mean, when you're starting a project, you know that you have the fundamentals in your mind, that this is how we're going to build it, and these are the facts and the dimensions. Now that you're experienced with it, you quickly understand how the modeling is supposed to be done. But then for me, it happens is that I'm able to kind of structure the project in my mind very quickly. But then the client also puts forward some quirky requirements that I have to really think about, that how am I going to pull this off? I have no clue about it. So how often that completely unknown
all the time
problem comes to you all the time. Okay.
Yeah, it pretty much does, because it's like either anything from, we really want this visual to do this, to, we'd really like to have this extra 3 sets of tables and data in our report that wasn't in the plan to start with. Or, the audience of this has changed, or can we now we've seen this bit, can we restructure it this way? So, and that's always been the case, even when we were doing Excel projects. It's the same scenario.
Sure. Especially for Power BI, which is the modern tool. Do you battle the clients in terms of maybe suggesting them to change the solution that they're building, or maybe they're not doing it right? Because sometimes the ask is quite a bit weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's technically very, very difficult to pull it off. So do you battle the clients on that at times, or do you just run with it?
I think it's just a case of clearly explaining to them why you have your view. So why are you trying to push back? So you've got to give them the consequences of what they want to do in terms of cost. And I guess there's a couple of consequences. Doing something quirky is going to take longer and cost more. So there's that. How important is it? Because I guess one of the learnings, over the years from when I was a very beginner junior analyst, I'd build whatever somebody asked me. Right? This was back when I was working for the banks in the UK. If the CEO said, Wyn, or the CFO said, Wyn, can you build this? Yeah. I can. Off you go, right? Without any consequence of how maintainable it would be, how easily it would fall over when I left the company, none of those considerations.
Right.
So now it's more a case of going, I can do that, but this is the consequences. You hear the sort of phrase technical debt bandied around a bit. So it's that thing of,
That's right.
you're doing something that's outside the scope of, either best practice or ease of use or ease of sustainability. So you just got to let them know there's either a cost right now because it's going to take you way longer to build, or there's going to be a cost in the future when somebody else has to come in and pick this apart. Let's say you've got to add 65 bookmarks into the report to make it work properly in 17 pages. You're just going, well, we can.
I personally hate bookmarks.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And hidden slices, invisible buttons, all that sort of stuff, okay?
That's right.
It can make a report amazing, and it really can. And we've done it. We'll still do it for clients if they really want it. But we want to be able to say to the clients, this is the potential impact in the future. So there's no surprises, really. And you let them make the decision then. Quite often people ask for stuff without realizing the consequences. So you'd go, oh, yeah, this is going to take me, 10 hours compared to the 3 hours it's taken me already for this thing. And they go, oh, well, don't bother then. So it's a case of just, having that conversation and giving them the feedback.
The other thing that I wanted to know was that for somebody like who's at your stature, like who's got a lot of experience of creating content, writing books, and creating solutions, practical on-the-ground experience of teaching people and solving problems. You get stuck at a quirky problem. How do you go about researching for it? Like you have no idea as to how do you pull this off. How do you go about researching for it to the actual solution that works? Like what's your process of breaking down the problem into smaller chunks that maybe the mindset of it, everybody can learn from that?
Yeah. I've certainly been guilty of just going down a rabbit hole of just chasing my own formulas or chasing my own process, and being determined to get to the solution by the way I'm currently thinking. And normally the best answer to that is just to stop and just have a rethink. Either if you've got somebody to discuss it with, just start talking it through with someone, and your brain, they might not even know what the hell you're talking about, or, but just start having a conversation with someone about it, and your brain then processes it in a different way. And you can often come up with your own better solution as you're doing it. And just having a break and just stepping away, letting your brain do some magic in the background. And then like with formulas and things, it's a case of thinking about it in a process of, right, what am I actually trying to do here? How can I break it down into its pieces? And I'm saying this knowing I full well, tomorrow, having said this, we'll go down the rabbit hole again and spend an hour trying to work something out and not do this. So do what I say, not what I do. Okay. And then it's a case of, researching, a bit of Googling. We've got a team of 10 of us, so we can ask internally, which is a nice thing to have. Just Googling stuff, seeing what pops up, knowing sort of what blogs and forums are the ones that I find most helpful. YouTube channels, videos, other bits and pieces. And really the other thing is just, I keep watching clips of things and watching little bits of videos that aren't relevant to me today, but then they're in the back of my mind somewhere, and something will crop up and I'll go, oh, I think I saw Chandeep did a video about that somewhere, and I'll go back and watch it. So those sorts of things. Yeah, it really helps.
What do you think is the pathway for anybody, if I could just use the term data analyst or whatever fancy term is going around in the market these days? So what's the path for somebody to become one? And then could you also maybe throw in some realistic timeframes so that, it's not like as crazy as, hey, I became a data analyst in a month or a week, or I don't know, whatever crazy time frame is it. So what's the path? What skills do you have to pick up, both technical and non-technical?
I think if you can work, I don't know, I'm going to, I've only got my own frame of reference. And then also, people, I guess we've hired. So, but we're trying, as a consulting firm, we're trying to hire people with experience because we're charging people out to clients who want, something immediate.
Sure.
But I think the grounding you could get within a team, within different teams within a company, in terms of, experience of working with people, delivering to deadlines, doing analysis for different departments and different sort of scenarios, that's just gives you a really good solid foundation in a lower stress environment, I guess, because you're employed by the organization. You've got the support of the people around you. You've got probably a path to promotion through the various different areas of the business as well. You can get experience in different areas. So I think if you can get a job, within a finance team or within, could be a HR team or an operations team, and you start plugging away with Excel, which is my background, and start building reports, and then just spotting what currently is going on that you think could be made more efficient or more useful, then that's a good starting point. And you probably need a good couple of years of that experience, I think, just to really sort of bed those skills down. And yeah, if you then did want to sort of go to some other, like a consulting firm or something like that, then that sets you up, I think, nicely for that sort of transition. Depends on what you find you enjoy doing. Some analyst roles.
What skills do you hire for in your company at the moment? Like, what would you test out in a candidate? Like, this is the right fit. This is what I want.
So good communication skills, ability to hold a conversation confidently with a CFO, backgrounds ideally in finance, that sort of thing. But it could be operational, but real world business users. That's where we focus. We're not an IT company as such. We are probably competing a little bit with people who are coming from a database administrator backgrounds, the SQL folks, but that's not our offering. So, like you say, data analyst is a big word. It's like, what does it cover?
Yeah.
I've been a business analyst in 3 different roles, and they've all been different. So it's an interesting one. What a business analyst is, what a data analyst is. But I think logical thinking. If you've got to have an attitude, or you've not got to have an attitude, but you should be a person, if you want to do well in this sort of world of analysis and reporting and things, you want a mindset that makes you challenge a bit of what's the norm so far and how you can make things better. The magic word is there must be a better way, right? If you've had that thought, then you're in the right spot, I think.
What I've been seeing is that it's becoming more about the tools than the actual analysis. Like, for example, when you are testing for business understanding, literally everything that you would want to do in Power BI, you could literally do that on a back of the envelope as well, with broad calculations. And people working in senior financial roles for a very long period of time, that's the skill that they have. They may not know how to code it, but they could take a look at your report and one glance tell you it's right, it's wrong. So how do you test for this skill of business analysis? Like, do you understand the business or not? And how do you strike a balance that, okay, now that you know the business, we've got to use a tool to be able to build that business model so that it could be used on a repeated basis? It's like very rare to find out both the things in a person. Like, isn't it? Isn't that the case?
And I think, the actual understanding of the operations of the business, you have to be working somewhere for 6 months before my experience was I was pretty much useless for the first 3 months anywhere I've ever worked, because you're just getting up to speed, right? You're just picking up with what's currently going on. You're trying to, follow along. You're picking up all the jargon. And then sort of 3 months in, you're like, right, I sort of got this bedded down now. And then you just start chipping away at making incremental improvements. And then after a year or so, you might go, okay, well, this bit of the world and this bit of the world, I can now see where they connect. Whereas previously they were just 2 different things. And you can see the cause and effect and stuff like this. You start to get a bit more, seeing how things feed together. So then you can contribute. Because up until that point, I think you're just consuming. You're just absorbing. You're just seeing how everything fits together, and you're getting into the routine of things. For me, it was always that. And then after about a year, you then start sort of feeding back in, go, no, actually, we've been doing it this way, but what about this? Or has anybody thought about slicing the data this way, or having a look at this? Or, I've had a couple of those things in the past where just made recommendations on products and things. And it's just like, did you know that this product was actually losing you money? That sort of thing, by delving into the actual numbers underneath as well. And then doing some predictions and forecasting and things off it as well. So backing up your comments and analysis with some easy to consume data from an analyst point of view.
Do you think there is far too much focus on how pretty your visualization is as to how intelligent your analysis is? Is that the case?
Yeah. It needs to look good enough, right? I think there's some people just are so tired by the time they've done all the data prep, all the modeling, all the DAX, and it's working. It's just like, oh, there you go. It's just like, just have it. And they don't spend the extra hour just making stuff look a bit neater and a bit easier to consume. That visualization part could take days, and it really depends on the purpose and the audience of the report as well. What is it designed to be engaging and win some emotional response from the organization? Do you want to, adopt Power BI and therefore you want something to look really clean and, crystal clear and engaging so that it encourages adoption? Is it just an internal report for the team and therefore it doesn't need as much polish on the end of it? It really depends on what the use is of the report. But I always think there's a need for a little bit. If it doesn't look good, people just don't trust it. It's just human nature.
Yeah, I agree. But if you take a look at maybe like thousands of reports floating around published on the web, most people, they're going to focus on how pretty the report is. They're going to go to PowerPoint and design a nice background. This is even before what you have thought what your analysis is going to be, what value you're going to add, what metrics are helpful, how are you going to take a look at them. None of those questions I've asked. They're going to fire up PowerPoint, look for the best colors, the best design, the best looking charts and things like that. And once you have that fixation on how the report is going to look, then you start putting in, blocks of content, whatever content. So the aim there is to make the report look good, but not really useful.
Yeah.
And this is the complete opposite of what happens in real life. So when you're working with a client who's taking $1 million decision or millions of dollars of decisions based on the reports that you've prepared, he doesn't really care about whether you have that slick border or that, fancy contrasting color or that background or not. Till the time the numbers are looking green and the numbers are relevant to what your decisions are, whatever decisions you want to make, your report is going to stand out and probably even beat down a fancy looking report by miles.
Yeah. But I think we've experienced both, where the goal is to have the best looking report in the organization to make the team stand out in a big organization, versus versus we need the report to show the board of directors that we're investing in information technology. So we wanted to present it to them. So it needs to look good. So sometimes looking good is the goal. People who post stuff on LinkedIn, they're actually doing the same thing that Microsoft do. So Microsoft, every demo has got a pie chart in it, right? Pie chart, donut chart, right. Because they look eye-catching. And that's the goal. The goal is to be eye-catching. It's not to make a decision. No one's making a decision. If you're publishing a report on LinkedIn and the aim is to catch somebody's attention, you don't want a report that's useful. You want a report that's eye-catching. But I agree with you, it's not real life, but it's the right report for the purpose. So it's an interesting take on it. I used to be dismissive of them, and I go, actually, why do they put pie charts in all their videos, Microsoft? Why do people post these, glassy looking, multicolored, dark background reports on LinkedIn? But it grabs your attention. You go, oh, that looks cool. And that might be just the hook they need to get you to notice their post.
Do you make a pie chart in your reports when you have to make it stand up?
Still no pie charts.
I had to ask that.
Pie charts.
Donor charts.
Deneb visuals are pretty cool now to make your visual, your sort of pages pop. I'm still only one of my colleagues is way better at Deneb than me. I've just been chipping away a little bit, teaching myself. But you can get some really nice looking visuals just with some simple bits of code. You can even copy and paste. So
that's right. That's right. It's just that like a JSON format, you'd have to kind of maintain layers of visuals on top of that. And interesting thing is that in Deneb, you could also do a bit of calculations with the data that you're kind of pulling in right inside Deneb without actually having to write another measure. So that's fantastic.
And just some of the stuff like that, simple things like gradient or bar charts with a bit of curve, something like that. You just go, that looks a bit different. That looks a bit, and it just makes something pop out with, and is still quite a useful type of bar chart. Oh, I just remembered something as well. You mentioned earlier about research and how I find help with problems. And, the other one now, Chat GPT.
That's right.
GPT-4 now, I was really dismissive of GPT-3. I tried something out and it gave me nonsense and made up stuff. But some of the DAX, Power Query, those sorts of things, really good. Whether it's just helping you write some code or pasting some code in and say, explain what this bit's doing or whatever it might be. It's really good now.
How do you see these tools spanning out? I mean, I had another question in mind, but now that you mentioned, but how do you see these tools spanning out with respect to general use in audiences? And then what's your take on how soon are they going to become reliable enough that you could literally trust it, take the code, shove it inside your model or whatever, and be done with it?
I don't know if you can ever 100% trust it. And the day you can is the day we all retire. So, because there's just nothing for us to do then, is there really? But, it's already like almost there. It's pretty much there. So the thing I love about the sort of GPT-4 stuff as well is the fact that you can, not only does it write the code for you, it explains the code. You can then say stuff like, let's say you're writing a DAX formula. You can then say, the DAX formula you've given me uses the word date for your date table, but mine's called calendar. Can you rewrite the formula? And it'll rewrite it. And I've done other one, like I did one the other, what was the one I did yesterday? It was something along the lines of writing, how do I filter in Power Query, how do I filter this list based on another list, a mapping table? Okay, so I want to filter this table based on matching items in a little mapping table. And it wrote me this code, and it was like involving all these sort of list.accumulate crazy stuff. And I went, is there a simpler way? Enter. And it said, yes, you can merge two queries together, expand the rows, and it wrote the code. And it's just like, how does it know that's the simpler way? But it was a simpler way. And it's just like, wow, this is just cool. Okay, it's just really impressive.
Do you think that the need for understanding about what has been done is going to go down because the code just works? Because at the moment, I believe that a lot of people are going to come to your videos, my videos, or anybody else's videos is because there is also an inherent need to understand how did it happen?
Yeah.
Can I make it happen on my own data? Because what I'm talking about doesn't really match to what you're doing. So there is an inherent need to understand. So when you have a tool like GPT-3 or GPT-4, do you think that the inherent need to just understand what's happening is going to go down in general audiences?
No, but I think the effort involved to work out what's going on is massively reduced because it will explain it to you there and then inside the code rather than you having to go off and search our videos or different forums. It's the explanation is given in there, or you can just say, could you explain it to me like a 10-year-old? And it'll actually give you a real basic breakdown of all the elements that are going on. 1 month ago, I was dismissive of this whole thing. And now I'm like a true believer all of a sudden. It's just the more I try it out, the more I'm just impressed by it. And it does crazy stuff as well sometimes. But honestly, the core of it is just pretty insane. And the fact that, Copilot is coming from Microsoft and they're going to be basing that on I don't really know the ins and outs, but the GPT-4 background. So it's going to eventually be embedded in all these applications, Office applications, etc. Power BI probably at some point. Mad, So different way of working.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. The question that I left off prior to this question was that I was going to guess the visual that you most make in the reports that you make, be it personally for the client. It would be either the table or the matrix visual, but a fancier version.
Yeah, it's
it's
either bar chart or matrix with data bars. Those are probably my two go-tos. Yeah. So basically a hacked bar chart in order to put sort of labels inside the bars and stuff like this. So probably one of the card visual, bar chart.
That's right. Oh, of course. Yes.
And then, those would be the main ones, that I sort of.
What do you think that makes the table or the matrix visual so popular? Like why? Now, you can make the fanciest chart, but then people want to take a look at the numbers in a table. I mean, I have had this repeatedly. Like, can I just have a table? And then people often say, hey, deck it up. So what they mean is that I still want a table, but I want my table to look nicer. So what do you think? Why is the table visual so popular? Like, what is it about that gives people more, more control over what they're looking at? If I could just use that word.
I don't know. There must be something about sort of just actually being able to see the numbers and store those in their head, actually easier. And maybe it's just a familiarity thing. Maybe it is because, we've all come from the grid of Excel, that we're just,
That's right.
It's a comfortable space that our brains, those people's brains are just used to consuming it in that way. But I would imagine that maybe other people who aren't, spreadsheet folks would prefer bar charts, pie charts, Quite often on training, I show people, somebody says, I show them a bar chart. Like, oh, that's really nice. Can you make the colors of every bar different color? And you go, yes. And I show them, you can choose the different options. They go, but don't do that. Please don't do it. Try and keep to 3 colors on a page if you can, because it's less, overwhelming for people. And try and keep all the colors that are consistent. Would mean that if it's head count, make it blue. Then the other chart, if it's head count, make it blue. Don't have a different color bar for every different department. But some people just like that because it looks engaging, and it might be the right thing for that team. Again, know your audience. But generally, it can be a bit overwhelming when there's that too many colors and things. So,
what typically would you do to your table to make it stand out or something?
Bold header, flashy rows. No. Why does that exist, Chandeep? Why does bold header, flashy rows exist? It's just awful. I go minimal view, a bit more row padding. Why don't they call it row height?
Surprisingly, not a lot of people know about the padding.
It's called padding for starters. What a crazy name for it. Row height. Come on.
So, and it just really makes a difference. Just spacing out your content, and it's just like breathe, like adequate spacing between the top and the bottom. Yeah. What else would you kind of do to your table to make it look better?
The heading alignment is always takes me about 5 minutes to work out how to get the columns to align the proper way.
There are a lot of alignment options now.
Displaying numbers to the smallest relevant, digit. Is 6.23 million really worth it? Is it going to influence decision if somebody just saw 6.2 or even 6 million? Just keep it as simple as possible with the numbers. I do like the new subtitle and the new divider.
That's interesting.
I think it makes the messaging really quite nice. So a nice heading like sales dollar, and the subtitle with a bit more information, just in its simplest form, whatever the chart's showing, and just making it clean. Right. So those sorts of things, as clean as possible, as least clutter. And I do add, if it's a simple 1 column or maybe 2 column matrix or table, I do add data bars as well, conditional formatting data bars with a light color to make it the number just pop, and sort it. Sort your table. Don't make people have to work. Don't have it alphabetically unless alphabetically makes sense for some reason. Sort it in the right order, maybe with a variance or something in there as well to give you some context to the numbers. Have you got any magical tricks inside a table visual?
For me, I'd like to keep the titles of all my charts, be it a table or anything, dynamic. So the title should change depending upon how you're interacting with the slicer. That enriches the table a lot. Nice. That is one. Just like you, minimal layout, thin borders, things like that. So that's given for sure. And I always tend to right align the numbers and left align the text. That's easy. Never center align, that sort of stuff, because it's hard to read the numbers that way. I'd also work on the totals as to if you have, let's say, a category, a subcategory, and a subcategory, at what level do you really want to see the total? Because the more deeper you're down in the hierarchy, the lesser subcategories you'd have. So you just have one subcategory and a total beneath that. It just looks a lot for people to process because you have the same number repeated. So I'd also kind of work on the totals a bit, just consciously displaying the right amount of totals at the right granularity. That, and just like you, data bars. And I also play around with SVGs quite often. The other thing that I do in my tables is that I often go for KPI icons or something. So for example, the idea of looking at the table is that okay, this is done, this is good, so check mark or something. Like in one icon, you're just able to take a look at the row and this is good to go.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things.
Yeah.
Even though it's a table, I would try to reduce the effort to read the table. That's what my idea is.
And have you ever played with, what are they called? Spark lines inside the tables?
I have.
Yeah. It's not something I've used sort of very often, but I like that. I've seen quite a few reports of them in there that can be quite impactful.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're playing with time periods and, you just want to give a little indication of how the trend is doing. You don't really want to take a look at the numbers. They can be interesting to add.
Yeah. And then there's the concept of, not cramming too much on a page. Try. And that's that thing of, as the report developer, you're building each visual one at a time. So in your head, there's a logical order and there's a pattern and it slowly develops over time. Whereas the end user gets hit in the face with it in the instant 1 second they first look at it. So if you cram too much on there, their eyes go all over the place, especially if you haven't sort of grouped stuff with white space or some lines just to separate stuff apart. And it's just going to be overwhelming. So again, know your audience, do what they really need. But quite often the right thing is just to keep it as simple as possible, because too much detail, too much clutter makes it hard to focus.
That's right. I mean, it takes a lot of visual planning with respect to what the audiences want, to what you actually would want to build, because otherwise, you're just going to cram everything up in the visual. It's just going to get a lot of cluttered and stuff.
And you've got those beautiful things, tool tips and other things, and drill through pages, all those sorts of techniques to add to a simple page. And again, maybe bookmarks to some extent, but normally I think a different page is probably a better solution than a bookmark. That's where I go these days.
Yeah. I mean, bookmarks were introduced for the right reason, literally like a bookmark, like you're reading a report, you can just place it there. But then people got creative and they started using it for all the fancy things. And now it's just completely blown out of proportion. I mean, the fanciness has taken over the utility of the bookmark.
I remember the first one of the first ones I did, I think Amanda Kofsky or whoever it was, did a little tutorial on how to make a button changed from a left slider to a right slider when you click on it. So you had this sort of like hidden buttons behind each other. When you click on it, it bookmarks and shows, and then bookmarks and hides. And it was a nightmare to maintain. You built it, brilliant, but then maintaining it, just awful. So
I often come up with this analogy of dressing up for the party. So you would not really dress up for the party every single day. So for every single report that you are creating, just try to make it as simple as maintainable as possible. But in case you want to dress up for the party once in a while, not every day.
I like that. That's a nice analogy. That's good. Yeah, I agree.
Speaking about all of these things that we've discussed, modeling and DAX and query, I mean, it kind of brings me to a point that Excel is like, I don't know, 3 decades old, or even more than that. I still see people bending towards Excel shortcuts, still VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, pivot table still in the game. And then on the other side of it, you have these modern tools, which are still a decade old, like DAX and Power Query and data modeling and all of that kind of stuff. Load that on top of all of these AI tools that are being integrated and all the third-party applications that you have, kind of embedded in Power BI. How do you see an individual coping up with the skill building curve? Isn't it like too much? Even for I believe it's too much for me as well.
Yeah. Writing my book, I had a certain number of pages as a target, like in terms of print cost and weight of the book and delivery and all this sort of stuff. So there was a target number of pages. So when you've got a restriction like that, you've got to be quite, judicious about which content is the most relevant to a new user. So, there is stuff that you can cut down and focus on. And I think doing some formal training or reading a book that someone's curated down can really help you get started. Because like you say, it's just everywhere. Where do you start? There's just so much. My journey was Excel first, into Power Pivot, then into Power Query, into those things together. And then, the day Power BI came out, we were doing Power BI stuff and just following that journey along. So we've had this like incremental path. We've grown up with it. But yeah, somebody coming at it today, it's like, ooh, where do you go? There's like Melissa Coates' diagram of the whole, infrastructure. And it's just like quite terrifying if you look at it like that. But I think you just have to chip off a piece and just go, right, I'm just going to learn how to build a report using some simple data. I then have to publish that report. I then got to learn about sharing that report properly. And then you start to get, better and better with all the focusing in the areas like Power Query, like DAX, even the admin side. And then you get into the optimization piece. And then you're into the whole premium piece with XMLA endpoints and partition refreshes, which just goes over my head, most of it. But there's, I can be in a discussion with Power BI specialists and have no idea what they're talking about, even though I'd count myself as a Power BI specialist, because I'm coming from the Excel business world. These folks are coming from the IT database admin SQL world. And there's this overlap. I initially felt a bit daunted, but, it's just like, no, we're just coming at it from a different angle. We've all got our, backstories, our other knowledge in other spaces. If you start comparing yourself to what other people know, then you're not comparing yourself to one person. You're comparing yourself to 75 people or 25 people that you follow. And you're never going to know what they know because there's 25 people. So don't feel bad. You've got to compare yourself against yourself last year. Do you look back on what you did last year and just go, oh, that was bad? That's how it should be.
All right, Wyn, I think it has been a great conversation with you. We've well past the sacrosanct 1 hour mark. Thank you so much for making the time.
No worries.
Do you maybe want to leave us with a feature that you really, really want in Excel to be added and in Power BI as well?
Excel, sheet protection, but tables can still work. So allow tables to expand, contract, add rows, etc., filter them, but on a protected sheet so that people can't change columns they shouldn't, like formulas. So data entry, great. Formulas and things auto-complete in, no. So a complete overhaul of data protection, basically, on Excel would be my request.
Okay.
Plus center across selection as a button. That's the other one, rather than merge cells.
That's true.
Power BI feature. I've got a few on ideas.powerbi.com, but I'm just trying to think. They're all little things, all sort of little improvements, all these sort of paper cut issues. So I'm trying to think. I don't know one I can't think of one. You've caught me cold. Check out ideas.powerbi.com.
I'm gonna.
I'll have to put a link. Can you put a link in the description? I'll send you my little link to my top 3 because there's a load, and I'll kick myself as soon as we hang up that I didn't say it.
Sure. If people want to reach out to you, they want to connect with you, what way should they be reaching out to you?
Yeah,
I've got anywhere?
I've got a little link called Wyn, WYN.bio.link, and that gives you all my various places and platforms.
I'll put that down.
Access Analytic website, YouTube channel, and various other places, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that sort of good stuff.
Thanks so much, Wyn, for taking out the time. It was an absolute pleasure. Absolutely. I really hope we can do this again sometime.
Indeed. Thanks, Chandeep. Really appreciate it.